Welcome to another episode of the Superpowered Fancast. This is Darren. Now, I don't know if it's providence or divine intervention or some unseen hand in the universe guiding this podcast, but this episode, which is episode 30 of the Superpowered Fancast, happens to coincide with the 30th anniversary of Star Trek The Next Generation. So, Star Trek The Next Generation aired September of 1987, and it ran for 7 seasons. So in honor of the series, in fact, in honor of the series that was, in essence, my Star Trek. Now, my stepdad introduced me to the original Star Trek when I was a little kid, and I loved it, but Next Generation was my Star Trek. So in honor of that series, I decided to just do, for this episode, a list and describe 2 of my favorite episodes from all 7 seasons of Star Trek The Next Generation. So just kind of jump into it, to go with season 1. Now, the first episode I'm going to talk about is season 1, episode 23, Skin of Evil. Now, Skin of Evil originally aired April 25th, 1988. And the reason why I enjoyed it is because it's significant in 2 ways. One, because it's almost the tail end of the season, so there wasn't like a huge season finale for the first season, because a lot of people didn't actually think that the show would last longer than 1. But it also is the episode that actually killed off a main character. So this is the episode in which the Enterprise is diverted to find the shuttle, to find a crash shuttle that contains Counselor Troy. And when they send down the away team to rescue Troy, they discover a creature named Armis. Armis has no conscience. In fact, he's told the away team and the captain that he is the physical personification of evil.
You say you are true evil. Shall I tell you what true evil is? It is to submit to you. It is when we surrender our freedom, our dignity, instead of defying you.
I will kill you and those in there.
But you will still be here, in this place, forever, alone, immortal. And
to prove that, he kills Chief Security Officer Natasha Yar. And the episode is significant because, again, no one knew at the time, especially I didn't know at 11 years old, I didn't know anything about contract negotiations or someone wanting to leave a series after the first season. But apparently actress Denise Crosby wanted to leave the show, and she had fulfilled her contractual obligations and decided that she wanted to leave. So the production decided they were going to kill off her character. And it was a surprise because, you know, you're in all the promo art, all the pictures, you get all the magazines. I would get Starlog and Wizard, and they'd have pictures of the cast, and it would be and she'd be part of it. So you didn't think that her character would die, and it was so significant because in that episode, like, you see Dr. Crusher do everything within her power to try and bring Tasha back. And you've seen on the original series, you've seen McCoy do more with less to bring someone back from the dead, especially a main character. So there wasn't that sense of permanence that there was until the end of the episode, and they realized there was nothing else they could do. So that was it was interesting to me, and it was one of my favorite episodes, not necessarily because Tasha died, but because there was the scene at the end at her, I guess you call it a funeral, at her funeral, where she apparently recorded a message to everyone, just kind of laying out what she learned from them as members of a family. Because if you know anything about Tasha, you know she grew up an orphan on her planet and escaped it because it's in a state of perpetual war. So that part was significant in how she kind of had a personal message for each member of the crew, and that was a really pivotal scene, a really interesting scene, and I'm going to play the audio for that right now.
We're here together to honor our friend and comrade, Lieutenant Natasha Yar. Coming to terms with the loss of a colleague is perhaps the most difficult task we must face in the work we have chosen to pursue. We will all find time to grieve for her in the days that are ahead. But for now, she has asked that we celebrate her life with this.
Hello, my friends. You are here now watching this image of me because I have died. It probably happened while I was on duty, and quickly, which is what I expected. Never forget I died doing exactly what I chose to do. What I want you to know is how much I loved my life, and those of you who shared it with me. You are my family. You all know where I came from and what my life was like before. But Starfleet took that frightened, angry young girl and tempered her. I have been blessed with your friendship and your love. Will Riker, you are the best. You trusted me, you encouraged me, and most of all, you made me laugh. Deanna, you are capable of so much love. You taught me without ever having to say a word. I realized I could be feminine without losing anything. Ah, Worf. We are so much alike, you and I. Both warriors, orphans who found ourselves this family. I hope I met death with my eyes wide open. Beverly, your fierce devotion comes from within. It can't be diminished. From you, I have learned to strive for excellence, no matter what the personal cost. Wesley, I'm sorry I won't be able to see you grow into the exceptional man you'll become. But your kindness and innocence are ageless. Geordi, in those moments I felt the most despair, you took my hand and helped me to see things differently. You taught me to look beyond the moment. My friend Data, you see things with the wonder of a child. And that makes you more human than any of us. Captain Jean-Luc Picard. I wish I could say you've been like a father to me. But I've never had one, so I don't know what it feels like. But if there was someone in this universe I could choose to be like, someone who I would want to make proud of me, it's you. You who have the heart of an explorer and the soul of a poet. So, you'll understand when I say, death is that state in which one exists only in the memory of others, which is why it is not an end. No goodbyes, just good memories. Hailing frequencies closed, sir.
Au revoir, Natasha. The gathering is concluded.
Sir, the purpose of this gathering confuses me.
Oh, how so?
My thoughts are not for Tasha, but for myself. I keep thinking how empty it will be without her presence. Did I miss the point?
No, you didn't, Data. You got it.
Okay, so that was Skin of Evil. That was the first episode from the 23rd episode from the first season that I enjoyed. The second one would be Conspiracy. Now, that was season 1, episode 25. Now, this was the episode that was actually before the season finale. So there was, once again, there was no like arc to the season. It was just kind of the first season episode. And this one is significant and actually had resonance to me at 11 because it was kind of gross. Like, you never thought you would see what happened on that episode on Star Trek for anything. So you have the return of Lieutenant Remick who was in a previous episode who came on board to kind of he was a taskmaster and basically somebody that everybody hated. But he returns, and you actually have a true conspiracy. You have Picard being diverting the Enterprise to meet with fellow captains on a deserted planet, and have them to them, trying to figure out what's going on, and him being told that there's something happening to Starfleet Command. So then, they get into the more disgusting elements of the show. Like, you have the little slug aliens that apparently have bored into people, into the members of Starfleet Command, and you see like their little proboscis sticking out of the back of their necks. And then you have Picard being invited to dinner and have him sitting down and opening the lid, and there's just like a bowl full of maggots just squirming around, and just seeing like all of them like picking them up with their hands and like put them in their mouths. It was absolutely gross. And even the worst part is that then they chase Remick to the subspace communications room and fire on him, and then you literally see like his head explode and this giant slug creature like coming out of his exploded torso. So that was for an 11-year-old kid that was gross, but for an 11-year-old kid like me, that was fascinating. Like, I absolutely enjoyed it. So those were my 2 favorite episodes from season 1. Now, going into season 2, it started to get more cerebral, and which I enjoyed. So the first episode I would say from season 2 that I enjoyed was The Measure of a Man. Now, this episode it was season 2, episode 9, and it originally aired February 13th, 1989. So this one was kind of the pivotal episode that had to deal with Data. Now, if you had subsequent episodes that dealt with Data as far as whether he's considered sentient or whether he's considered a person, and people trying to exploit him because he's an android, or people trying to recreate him. But this is the one that kind of set the tone for those future episodes. Like, you have episodes where Data decides to create another android, and then there's the repercussions of that when he decides to create a child. And then there's the episodes dealing with his, I'm using air quotes, brother, Lore, who's another Sung type android who has emotions. So that, so you deal with those episodes in the future, but the first one you deal with is The Measure of a Man. And in that episode, you have a scientist, a Starfleet scientist, who has petitioned to download Data's memories to the Starfleet mainframe, and then take Data apart piece by piece, like, in order to make more of them. And Data, who has studied the scientist's work and has found flaws in it, has decided he does not want to submit to being taken apart piece by piece, because honestly, he doesn't trust this guy to be able to put him back together. So he refuses. And the scientist then petitions Starfleet that Data is property, that he is not an officer in anything other than name only, that because he's a piece of property, he's property of Starfleet and must submit to the tests. So Data decides to leave Starfleet, but they won't let him because, again, his status as a person has not been established, is not part of case law. So in order to allow Data to have either his freedom to leave Starfleet or his right to say no to an experiment he doesn't believe is going to be successful and could result in his death, they have a trial to determine whether or not Data is an actual person. And because it's in deep space, there are two advocates, one advocate on both sides. Data goes to Captain Picard, to advocate on his behalf that he's a person. And he then goes to the next ranking officer, which would be Commander Riker, because Commander Riker then has to prove that Data is not a person, which Riker is reluctant to do so, because not only is Data a colleague, but he considers Data a friend. So there's a really interesting duality in how well Riker is at basically making the argument that Data is not a real person. And his argument is so compelling that it's actually probably one of the best scenes of the series. And I got the audio for that. I'm going to play now.
I request to be allowed to remove the commander's hand for your inspection.
Objection. Doesn't matter. Objection withdrawn.
Proceed, Commander.
I'm sorry. The commander is a physical representation of a dream, an idea conceived of by the mind of a man. Its purpose, to serve human needs and interests.
It's a collection of neural nets and heuristic algorithms.
Its responses dictated by an elaborate software written by a man. Its hardware built by a man. And now a man will shut it off. Pinocchio is broken. Its strings have been cut.
Now, one of the things I really loved about that scene is that not only does it allow for the poetic, but it's very just matter of fact. Like, he doesn't mince words. There's no hesitation in it until you get to the end of that scene, and he just kind of sits there after he's made his argument and just kind of puts his head in his hands like, oh shit, what did I do? It's just interesting to see. And even Picard, you can see in that moment, like, Picard does not know whether or not he can actually make this argument because of how well Riker has done in kind of proving his point. So that's interesting. Even the final verdict in the case is interesting enough because it allows for many different arguments on not only what is sentience, what is actual sentience, but what if, in the criteria for sentience is met and you still go ahead, what is your responsibility to this new form of life that you're creating or that you're hoping to replicate? Like, what do they become after that if they have self-awareness?
Your Honor, a courtroom is a crucible. In it we burn away irrelevancies until we are left with a pure product, the truth, for all time. Now, sooner or later, this man, or others like him, will succeed in replicating Commander Data. Now, the decision you reach here today will determine how we will regard this creation of our genius. It will reveal the kind of a people we are, what he is destined to be. It will reach far beyond this courtroom and this one android. It could significantly redefine the boundaries of personal liberty and freedom, expanding them for some, savagely curtailing them for others. Are you prepared to condemn him and all who come after him to servitude and slavery? Your Honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits. Waiting.
So that's Measure of a Man. The next episode from season 2 that I want to talk about is episode 13. And this one is called Time Squared. And it originally aired April 3rd, 1989. Now, this one is not a whole lot of dialogue, which I actually kind of like. It's the reason why I like this episode is because it really is about Picard kind of questioning himself. And you always got the sense from the first season, and even going into the second season, just how confident Picard is in who he is as not only a Starfleet officer, but also as a captain. So the fact that you have a Picard from the future who shows up in a shuttlecraft and can't be communicated with, but has left the Enterprise, who has abandoned the Enterprise before it's been destroyed. It's interesting to see how the present day Picard is frustrated with his future self, because he can't understand why he would ever make that decision. And even the fact that the decision that he makes, even towards the end of that episode, as they're trapped in the vortex, and the circumstances play out the same way before, you can see not only Picard's frustration with himself, but even when future Picard starts to meld with the timeline, you can see just the determination that Picard has been known for play out against itself. So it's a interesting character study in duality of purpose, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed that episode. Now, going into season 3, you did have some significant changes. Not a whole lot of huge changes, but the ones that were made were significant. Like you had the change in uniforms, which I kind of liked. They kind of went from the unitard look to the tunics, which kind of led to one of my favorite memes, which is just Picard like constantly pulling down his tunic in every scene, because it's always kind of riding up on him with the huge shoulders. But you had that, and you had Wesley becoming an acting ensign. So you kind of had the character who is the only child on the series, like his point of view, him finally becoming a member of the crew instead of just being like the kid who shows up every once in a while. So, and I promise that not all of these choices are going to be Picard heavy, but you have a classically trained actor. You have a member of the Royal Shakespeare Company as the captain of a starship. You're going to have some moments where he's just able to, he's just going to act the fuck out of something. So it's interesting to just kind of see. It's interesting to talk about because those performances are so dynamic. So the episode I want to talk about is episode 23 of season 3, and it was called Sarek. And the episode aired May 14th, 1990. And it's significant in many ways because, one, it's beyond having Dr. McCoy on the first episode, Encounter at Farpoint. This is the first appearance by someone from the original series. So you have like Spock's father, Sarek, played by Mark Lenard. on the episode. And it's also a good episode because it deals with it deals with age. I mean, it deals with age and aging and things that happen as one gets older. And, Sarek being a Vulcan, Vulcans are, prized for their logic, for their control of emotion. But there is a level of Vulcan physiology that is empathic. So what's interesting about the episode is that you have Sarek, who's been the Vulcan ambassador for, at this point, like centuries, and he is dealing with, he's pushed himself so far in negotiations with an alien race that he has, he's starting to show breaks. And then it turns out that he has Bendai syndrome, which is a degenerative disease that affects Vulcans, specifically their ability to control their emotions. And because of the empathic nature of Vulcans and his handler trying to kind of keep him in check, the reason why everybody kind of finds out about this is because as they're exuding their control over Sarek's emotions, everyone else's emotions are going insane. Like just clashes of violence, just violent outbursts between members of the crew, like Picard just screaming at Riker, Wesley and Geordi screaming at each other. A fight breaks out in 10 Forward. Just the fact that and there's a concert on the ship and you see Sarek crying. Like that's all of these instances of emotional outbursts. Those are the clues that lead Picard to finally confront Sarek. And if you know anything about, the world of Star Trek, like Sarek is a hero. He's a hero to not only the Vulcans, but also the Federation. Like he's one of the people who brokered peace with the Klingons. Like he's one of those people where he's the elder statesman. You don't question his ability. You don't question his intellect. And you certainly don't question, especially with him being a Vulcan, you don't question his control of his emotions. So just the moment when he confronts Sarek about his Bendai syndrome and the decision that they make because in order to the Lagarans, which is the species that they're meeting to have negotiations with, will only deal with Sarek. So in order to actually bring peace to this planet, Picard does a risky move and decides to mind meld with Sarek. So Sarek transfers all of his emotional turmoil to Picard so that he can go and negotiate with the Lagarans. And it leads to one of the most melodramatic scenes in the series, but probably one of really great kind of acting exercises from Picard, where not only do you get, Patrick Stewart just kind of, acting the hell out of a scene, but you get insight into Sarek. I mean, the fact that he kind of breaks down and talks about how he loved his first wife, Amanda, and how much he regrets never being able to show her the tenderness that she deserved, how much he loves his son Spock, like all of these things. Like you get to see that emotion portrayed by Patrick Stewart in that moment. So I'm going to play just the audio of that, just so you can even without seeing it, just vocally, you can imagine how powerful a performance that is.
No! It is wrong. It is wrong! A lifetime of discipline washed away, and in its place, Bedlam. I'm so old. There is nothing left but dry bones. Dead friends. Tired. Oh, so tired.
It will pass, all of it. Just another hour or so. You're doing fine. Just hold on.
No! This weakness disgusts I hate it! Where is my logic? I'm betrayed by desires. I want to feel. I want to feel everything. But I am a Vulcan. I must feel nothing. Give me back my control.
Jean-Luc!
Herod. A man. I wanted to give you so much more. I wanted to show you such tenderness. But that is not our way. Spock. Amanda. Did you know? Baron, can you know how much I love you? I do love you. Beverly,
I'm here, Jean-Luc. I'm not going anywhere.
it's quite difficult. The anguish of the man. Despair. Pouring out of him all those feelings. The regrets. I can't stop them. I can't stop them. I can't.
Don't even try.
So the next episode I'm going to talk about, in fact, is kind of going to be a bit of a cheat, because it's going to be not only the second episode of the third season I'm going to talk about, but also the first episode of the fourth season, because it's a two-parter. It is probably the seminal two-part episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, and that is The Best of Both Worlds. The Best of Both Worlds was started off as episode 26 of season 3, and originally aired June 8th, 1990. And also the second part, episode 1 of season 4, that aired September 24th of 1990. Now, I don't know how much I can talk about Best of Both Worlds, because it's one of those episodes that if you're a Trek fan, you know about. It's the episode where the Borg return, and instead of going after the Enterprise, they go after Picard specifically. Like, they literally take Picard from the Enterprise and turn him into Locutus of Borg. And then there's the battle at Wolf 359. And the reason why 359 is so significant is because then it pivots into everything else. Like, you don't get Deep Space Nine and Benjamin Sisko without Wolf 359. So that episode kind of is the branching off for everything after. That's where you get your Deep Space Nine. That's where you get Voyager. Just because both of those shows they stem from the repercussions of that episode. So that's one of the things. And it's just really well written. Like, you get emotion from everyone. Everyone has their moment to shine. You have Picard. Picard, like, dealing with the loss of self. You have his crew fighting not only to stop the Borg, but also to rescue him when everyone is telling them to do the opposite. You have Riker stepping up as captain. You even have a moment where Guinan, who, even at that point, Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg, even at that point, who has never expressed to anyone her relationship with Picard other than the fact that everyone knows that the two of them are close. Like, you have Guinan, who says she's already mourning him, but the Borg is so dangerous, like she's willing to let him go, to just telling, Riker, you've got to stop thinking about him as being Picard, because it's going to cloud all of your decisions. You're going to have to actually be the captain of the ship. So that heart to heart that they have is really good. And even the fact that Riker takes in everyone's advice and still does his own thing and it works out is one of the reasons why, if you really, if you watch the show, you can absolutely understand why they keep offering him his own commissions. Like, they keep offering him his own captaincy, and you wonder why he doesn't take his own ship. But then, considering like most of the fleet is destroyed at Wolf anyway, like there's kind of a reason why at that point. So that's best of both worlds. Now, the next episode I'm going to talk about is episode 14 of season 4, and that one is called Clues. Now, I've talked about Clues before. In fact, if you go to my website, if you go to superpoweredfancast.com, you'll actually find an article, an editorial I wrote, which is kind of like a review of the entire episode, like the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like, just kind of talking about, just kind of as a throwback to just kind of my favorite episodes of Next Generation, just in written form. But you can find my review of Clues. But just in a nutshell, Clues, which aired February 11th, 1991, takes place when the crew wakes up, like literally just wakes up on board the Enterprise. And the only person who has been awake the entire time is Data. And Data tells them that they've hit they hit an anomaly that knocked everyone out, but because he's an android, it didn't affect him, and they were out for like 6 seconds before he revived everybody by pumping gas through the ventilation systems. So they all wake up and they think that just this 6 seconds has passed, and they're thankful and they keep going. But they were there investigating an M-class planet, which apparently is gone. But when it turns out that some things have been altered in the timeline, it leads Picard to question whether or not Data's lying. And Data, who is an android and is incapable of lying, that it makes that mystery deeper. Like and because it's called Clues, that's the reason why you have clues. You have you have clues like Worf's wrist was broken and reset, which it shows 24 hours worth of healing. You have Dr. Crusher, who had an experiment going that shows 24 hours of growth. So if they were only knocked out for 6 seconds, why are there so many instances on the ship where 24 hours have passed? And just the way that they kind of work it out as Picard decides to turn the ship around and go back to the M-class planet, despite Data's objections, really wraps up well. The story wraps up really well, and I really enjoy it. And it's actually kind of why I wrote about it, because I like the fact that Data, that everyone took these steps and that they got it wrong. They they got it wrong, and then they had to fix their mistake, and that was interesting. That because not everything was perfect. Now, season 5 of The Next Generation, 2 episodes that I really enjoyed from that one. The first one is episode 18. It was called Cause and Effect. Now, it originally aired March 23rd, 1992, and it's the episode that introduces the USS Bozeman. And there'd been kind of time travel and time specific episodes up to then, but this one I kind of like, because this one actually started off with the Enterprise being destroyed, and then then the credits begin. So that immediately just kind of popped out at you, and then seeing it being destroyed over and over and over again, it was interesting to see. And then seeing how, and this one's actually kind of, again, more of a Data episode because Data's the one that just kind of picks up remnants of each time they've been destroyed, like just kind of remnants, like almost echoes of previous encounters. So he's trying to figure out what's going on, and then everyone else is too. Like they're starting to see it as well. Like people are having like nightmares of the ship being destroyed. So just kind of all of those clues coming together, and then the fact that you had both Picard and Riker have solutions for getting out of the anomaly they find themselves in, and it takes Data using these kind of repetitive patterns that everyone's trying to understand to decide whose plan is the one that's actually going to work. So that was cause and effect. Now the next episode is one that, again, that a lot of people know and have talked about, and it's called The Inner Light. Now, The Inner Light was the 25th episode of season 5, and it originally aired June 1st, 1992. And the reason why it's significant is because even though the beginning of the episode takes place on the Enterprise, once Picard is kind of hit by the particle stream from the probe, the rest of the episode takes place on the planet Catan. And just the fact that he wakes up knowing who he is, but everyone believes that he's a man named Kamen, and they treat him as such. And just the fact that he's trying to, find a means of escape, but once he realizes that he can't, he actually, settles into the life of Kamen. Like he, is married, he has children, he works to try and help the planet which is suffering from earthquakes, and it's a bittersweet episode because he lives an entire lifetime as Kamen, only to find out at the end that was the point of the probe, that the planet had died, and in order to preserve their culture, they created this scenario that they created, like this probe that would seek out a person and give them the memories of this planet and its culture that has been long since dead. So it was a very bittersweet episode. And again, it was another kind of Picard acting it up episode that I really enjoyed. And going into season 6, like there were some good episodes in season 6, but the only one that really kind of stood out to me was a 2-parter that happened in the middle of the first season. Like it wasn't like the season finale. It was an episode called Chain of Command, and it happened in 2 parts. Like the first part aired December 14th, 1992, and the second part aired December 21st, 1992. And this one was significant because you had just a big kind of upheaval of everything you'd been following for the entire like 6 seasons so far. So you had Starfleet bring in a new captain of the Enterprise, Edward Jellicoe, and because they decided they were going to send Picard, Worf, and Crusher on a secret mission to determine whether or not the Cardassians had a secret base in Federation territory, and Picard is captured. Like Worf and Crusher escape, and Picard not only is captured by the Cardassians, but is tortured. Just like tortured by Gul Madred. And it's significant because you see Riker and the rest of the crew dealing with Jellicoe and his and his command style, which is just very off-putting. Like he determines, like he has the ability to save Picard from torture by declaring that he was on a mission from Starfleet, but Jellicoe refuses. Like he refuses to admit that that Picard was sent on a Starfleet mission, so Picard is tortured because he's not considered a prisoner of war. The episode's also significant because not only do you have that clash between Jellicoe and Riker, where Riker gets relieved of duty, but you also have Jellicoe, and this is almost kind of an aside, like you have Jellicoe telling Counselor Troy that her uniform is inappropriate. So you actually at this point have Counselor Troy like wearing an actual Starfleet uniform from this point forward. And that's I just found that part funny because apparently like she's been non-reg for like 6 seasons already, and there's someone there's literally someone telling her to cover up. So so that was Chain of Command. Now again, there's a lot of good episodes that season, but that 2-part episode is just, it really stands out. And especially because you got, that famous line from Picard at the end. Now, season 7, I picked 2 episodes. Now, as much as I loved the series finale, All Good Things, these episodes I enjoyed because they're just kind of quintessential Trek, but they're also really good kind of character episodes, like just really good character moments and character studies. And the first one is Dark Page. Now, Dark Page is the 7th episode of season 7, and this one is actually all about Lwaxana Troi. So it's just it's centered specifically on Lwaxana's character, and she's been negotiating with a species that only communicates telepathically. So they sent her as a ambassador from Beta Z to use her telepathic abilities to talk with him. So of course she goes to the Enterprise to meet with her daughter Deanna Troi and the rest of the crew. But what they don't know is that she is suffering like the prolonged use of her telepathic abilities is affecting her mentally. And then it turns out that she's been suppressing a memory from everyone, including Deanna. And it's a memory of that's very significant to the point where she does everything mentally in her mind when Deanna tries to connect with her to bring her out of a coma. Like her mind literally fights her own daughter to keep her from learning the truth. And that truth being that Deanna had an older sister that drowned when she was an infant, and Lwaxana just like suppressed that memory because right after that Deanna's father died on a mission for Starfleet because he was a Starfleet officer. So Lwaxana, who up to that point, like every episode Lwaxana had been in, like she was the playful antagonist. Like she was always the one who was fun and lively, and you never took her seriously. So whenever she was on an episode, it was very light, and she was there for comedy. But this was like the first episode where she was portrayed as being I'd say almost a more well-rounded person. Like they stripped away kind of the comedy, and she was able to and just played the tragedy of those scenes just amazingly. Like you could feel, just even from an acting perspective, you could feel the emotion in that scene, like it's in those scenes, especially between the two of them. It was just it was a great episode, and again, not a lot of special effects. In fact, I don't even remember any special effects in the episode. It wasn't a whole lot of outside space stuff. It was really more just kind of like an inner study in loss. So that's one of the things I enjoyed about it. And then the last episode of that I'm going to talk about that I enjoyed was episode 11 of season 7. It was called Parallels. Now, Parallels aired November 29th, 1993. And again, if you go to superpoweredfancast.com and type in Parallels in the search bar, it'll take you to my review of this episode because I really enjoyed it. I talk about just quantum fissures and that in quantum theory, where every decision that you make, there's an infinite amount of things that can happen and actually do in parallel dimensions. So that this episode, Parallels, deals with Worf coming back from a Batleth tournament and him entering into one of those fissures. So he's shifting not through time, but from dimension to dimension. So you get to see different dimensions at work. Like you get to see a dimension where Picard isn't rescued by Riker. He's actually killed by the Borg. So Riker's captain of the Enterprise. You have a universe where Geordi and Data are both dead. You have a universe where Wesley is a full lieutenant on board the Enterprise. You have a universe where Worf is the first officer, and then you have a universe where the one significant aspect of it is that Worf is married to Troy. So just the fact that he's shifting from universe to universe and retaining his memories of the universe that he's in. Like it's not like he's shifting and doesn't know who he is and what's going on. Like he knows he is, but he just knows that something is different because all of those decisions have created their own reality. And those realities are fully formed and operating on a different subspace frequency than the one that we see. So, and even just the reveal that it's Geordi's visor that's moving him from universe to universe because of a quantum singularity pulse that it emits so that Geordi can see. That's even significant. So it even happens even after Geordi's dead, like Geordi dies in one of the universes, but his visor keeps moving Worf around. So that's it. I mean, those are my two, and they're not all my favorite episodes, but there are two significant episodes from each season of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Just two episodes that I really enjoyed. And I would love to know what yours are. Like, what are your favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation? Like always, you can contact me at superpoweredfancast@gmail.com. You can email me. I will email you back. You can follow me on Twitter at superpoweredfan. You can read my reviews and articles, and you can read all my Star Trek musings and writings on superpoweredfancast.com. You can read my DC Comics reviews and some of my movie reviews through Geeks Worldwide on the gww.com. And keep tuning in because we should be having some more guests coming on soon. Can't tell you who they are because, frankly, I don't know. But once I know, you'll know because I'll promote the hell out of it. But hoping to get Scott Snyder back on the show since DC Metal is in full swing. But until then, this is Darren for Superpowered Fancast signing off, saying I will see you next week. Bye.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks Assemble!